Hello, a very warm welcome to the Liverpool Parish Church online digital video bulletin, whatever we're calling it these days. Everything seems to be changing very quickly, but join me here Friday the 11th of September. This is the bulletin for, and as you can see, I'm not actually in Liverpool unless the live building has changed somewhat overnight. However, I am here in Venice on my break, but I've taken some time out in order to introduce the bulletin to you. As ever, there is a lot of stuff going on. First and foremost, I'm here to tell you that the recent changes coming into effect, whenever they come into effect, regarding public gatherings in the UK will not affect places of worship. We will continue with our stringent efforts to clean, to distance, to wear masks, etc., to make sure that church remains safe. But the government specifically has said that the places of worship do not count in this limitation to 6 people. So please still do come to church on Sunday. It is vital that we as Christians keep our witness of hope in what will be inevitably darker and more difficult times to come. Talking of events that give hope, we have on the 3rd of October, Saturday the 3rd of October, we have a poetry evening, a beacon poetry evening with talented young artists and musicians coming across Liverpool to come to this event. Again, stringent efforts will be in place, stringent adherence to the guidelines will be kept. And so please do go on Eventbrite to book your place onto what will be a truly inspiring evening. Now, as has been our tradition, Father Crispin has been speaking to one of our members of the congregation. We swap places this week, and he is going out and about into the world, whether it's on Zoom or in someone's garden, and he is speaking to a member of the congregation. Here he is now.
So today I'm talking to Becky Selman, and having just seen the delights of Venice, which is lovely and warm, it's not been too bad here for the last few days actually, so he could have stayed here, couldn't he? It's lovely here. I would say welcome to Liverpool, Becky, but you've been here a year, 18 months, something like that. How long have you been at St Nick's?
So I've been coming to St Nick's for just over 2 years now, since I arrived in Liverpool, having moved here from London for work reasons.
And it's a strange time to be here. And I know you moved house, I think just before Christmas. You must have been in it for a few weeks, and then suddenly all our world's changed. So how have the last few months been for you?
Yeah, very strange. I'm used to going out and about a lot, and also to traveling a lot. So I travel a lot normally for work and go to London quite a lot. So since March, until a few weeks ago when I started going around the country and seeing friends again, I've been basically in Liverpool. So that in itself has been strange. I think I found the first few weeks of lockdown really bizarre and quite difficult, because although I live on my own, I'm used to going out and seeing a lot of people and being very sociable. So to be kind of forced to socialise just on screen, to go to church just via YouTube, did feel difficult. But I suppose I took delight in being in my new house, in being in Liverpool, getting to know even better the kind of area of Liverpool I'm living in, spending more time reading, cooking, going for runs and walks. So it's been a kind of mixed experience, really.
Well, that's the great thing about South Liverpool, where you are, and I'm just down the road from you, that we've got everything here apart from a Waitrose, haven't we?
Absolutely, yes.
And I don't know, because I know one of the things you do, well, you've got two passions which you bring together, don't you? Cooking, though how you do that without Waitrose, I don't know, but you've got cooking and reading, so presumably they've featured quite a lot.
Absolutely, yes. So as you said, those are probably two of my two big passions, my two favourite activities, and I've spent a lot of time doing that. And they are two passions that I've entwined in a blog that I've been doing for the last few years, actually. Before I even arrived in Liverpool, I started this, when I thought how brilliant it would be to try and combine these two passions. And I realised how often food plays an important role in literature. And I just got the idea one hot summer in London of, why don't I look at what food appears in literature and then try recreating it, not in a kind of slavish attention to detail, but kind of recreate it for the 21st century, particularly if it was a kind of older text I was looking at. And that's something that I've kept going for about 4 or 5 years now. I started with the kind of earliest literature, looking at, well, Anglo-Saxon and medieval literature, and kind of basically followed it chronologically. So these days I'm kind of getting near the end. I'm on the 21st century.
Oh, I didn't because I love your blog, and I've spotted things, little bits of Jane Austen coming in, things like lots of puddings and things such
Yeah,
like that
lots
in
of
that
puddings
era.
and cakes, yes, which is kind of probably my preferred thing to cook anyway. So I do savoury food as well if that appears in a book. But I always feel particularly pleased if there's a cake that I can make, or a type of biscuit or so on. But I'm just thinking now, I've concentrated really solely on English literature and with a bit of Irish thrown in. But now I'm thinking, now that I'm in the 21st century, maybe I need to sort of spread my nets a bit wider, go to America, go to European literature, explore children's literature. So I think this is going to keep me busy for quite a while.
Oh, actually, that's quite good. So what does 21st century literature have to offer for food then? Don't say chips.
I find, I suppose, there are more references to food, because I think the focus often in 21st century fiction are kind of people like me, sort of going out to work, coming home in the evening, cooking meals. So in that sense, it's quite different from sort of Jane Austen, where the food is often playing a kind of important symbolic role, perhaps at a party, or to try and say something about social status. I think in modern literature, often it's more to do with just the details of the character's life. They come in from work and they hastily cook some pasta before, after their long commute. I don't know, before going out and solving a murder the next day, or so on. So I think I find the food is more, it's more kind of humdrum. It's often easier to cook, therefore I don't have to do the kind of research that I have to do with the older literature, and it probably does appear a bit more in the book, but perhaps with less kind of significance to it than in earlier literature.
It's fascinating that, because actually there are some authors you associate with food in the past. The clerical diarist, which everyone should read, Parson Woodford. He trots through these
Right.
past meals of the time, or Proust and his Madeleines.
Yes, yeah.
There is some where you name the author, you think of the food straight away, but what you're saying, that actually food is now just dotted into literature.
Absolutely, yes. So, I think even in the 21st century literature, there are some authors who are known to do quite a lot with food, or that I've certainly found do seem to be quite obsessed with detailing food. So somebody like the novelist Kate Atkinson, it's quite obsessed. There's quite a lot, and particularly I think often because she writes books set in the past, and I find she uses food as a kind of a sort of, I think, as evidence that she's done her research. So she will, if she's got a chapter that's set in 1953, then you will find references to food that kind of prove that she's done her research, because they're about rooting that chapter in 1953. So she has kind of meals that we wouldn't have nowadays, but they've got this sort of dated feel to them. So she certainly is very kind of interested in food as kind of, I suppose, historical evidence or a historical exhibit in her literature.
Although she then I never really warmed to her detective fiction with that.
The Jackson Bride one.
I never went for that. Now he's chips in a car sort of character, isn't he?
Yes, yeah. You get quite a lot of that with detectives. Another one is Ian Rankin's stories with Rebus, the detective set in Edinburgh. These detectives who are always kind of divorced, depressed, they drink too much, and then they just eat takeaway pizzas. So it's not so much for me to kind of cook with those.
Yeah, so it's a bit like the clergy, really. But then, of course, you're in that unique, not at all unique. Actually, everyone at St Nick's is the clergy child, as far as I can see. But you're in that distinguished subset of clergy children. So you've got quite a discerning view on what goes on in these buildings. And you've stuck with St Nick's. What is it that ensnared you here?
Well, I suppose what first brought me to St Nick's was when I was leaving London, and I was obviously thinking I'll need to find a church. and I did a bit of internet searching and sort of looking for churches in the centre of Liverpool. Obviously St Nick's came up, and I saw straight away, I think the first thing I saw was that there was a woman on the clergy team, so I thought that's good, that's my type of church. And I saw that there was quite a lot of outreach work with the kind of homeless, but also that I think there were pictures of the clergy wearing vestments, and I thought, well, I like my rituals as well. And I suppose what St Nick's has, which I really like, is that mixture of kind of, there's good theology, there is the ritual, there is the concern for the kind of wider world, and just lots of really nice, friendly people in the congregation, and really interesting people as well. So all those things have kind of brought me to St Nick's and have kept me at St Nick's for the last 2 years, and I'm sure for many more years to come.
I hope so as well, because of course the great thing you've just taken on is doing the rota for the readers, and the last person who did that job did it for 30 years. So
that's a record for me to beat then, isn't it?
Absolutely, you better go for that. But his predecessor in the job is still alive, so you can always take hints from the past. But
okay, that's great.
Becky, it's been fantastic talking to you, especially about the food and the books. So we've got a bit of a bumpy time ahead of us as a nation, of the city, in the next few weeks. But I know that we're going to keep going at the place of worship, which isn't affected by the new rules next week. And I'll see you in church on Sunday.
See you then. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, what a joy I'm sure that was, whoever Father Crispin was talking to. I'm sitting here in the courtyard next to the Pietà Monastery in Venice, where Vivaldi was choir master and where many of his works were premiered, and the girls of the orphanage attached to it. We haven't got any Vivaldi for you on Sunday, but we do have our monthly choral Eucharist. Please do come along. The choir will be singing some Renaissance music by the Spanish composer Victoria. It will be a treat. It will be a beautiful moment of worship. Otherwise, please join us. If you can't join us in person, please do join us live streamed at 10 a.m. on Sunday.